Every product needs something from you as a designer. The main role that comes in for a UX UI designer is to take in all of the information and digest it. Digest it in a way that the other person has not been able to see their product or their idea in that perspective. And you suggest an output, this should work.
In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Shruti, one of the talented UI UX designers here at Spring Studio. We dive into her fascinating journey from spatial design to now focused on UI UX design, the importance of prioritization, and how she finds order in the chaos of the design process. So whether you're a designer looking to refine your craft or a business owner wanting to understand the value of user experience, this conversation is packed with insights. So let's get into it.
You don't expect any user to be engaged in looking at numbers and titles and graphs on a screen every day. And if you have just a small element, like a loading element of a duck who's just walking in a row, right? To a person who's working in a corporate, opens up his dashboard for the first time in the morning, sees a duck walking in a row as a loader screen. That just brings a smile on that person's face before they have to look at numbers and graphs, right?
Yep.
Like the creative thought has no boundaries. I see each project as a blank sheet and then I define my roles. Okay, this is how I can be useful for this project. AI is an inspiration to become an assistant, a second brain that you use. I don't see a big change in the UX UI field in terms of growth. Technologically, we might see many different processes becoming even more seamless.
Shruti, hello. How are you?
Hi, Tristan. I'm good.
Good to see you. Very excited for this chat. It's been a long time coming. So happy to jump on and nerd out on design and startups and all that fun stuff with you.
Like all our conversations.
Exactly. Now we're just recording it. It's just going to be a conversation that we record. I would love to maybe start by giving the audience a little bit of your background and what you're up to. I think I can start to just kind of fill in a little bit of the gap. So Shruti is one of our UI UX designers here at Spring Studio. She's been with us a long time, just over a year now. And maybe you can take over and give us a short background about yourself and how you first got interested in product design and maybe also design in general.
Hi, everyone who's new to this podcast here. I'm Shruti, and I've been working with design pretty much most of my career. I started with working with exhibition design, which is more spatial stuff, and then I moved towards UX UI. And I did so by learning from developers. So that was a nice, quick introduction towards the world of design in a very technical sense. I think mostly at Spring Studio, I have grown to be a product designer. I've been looking at apps and user flows and structuring an entire product or MVP, mostly for companies that join us and need this kind of a design help. And yeah, the last year has been very, very successful.
Awesome. I would love to maybe double click into the role of UI UX design. I mean, I have my idea of what the role is in startups and business. How do you, from like someone who is designing every single day, like I don't have that luxury anymore. How do you like to think about and define the role of UI UX in the context of like a startup?
Basically, most of the companies that are kind of joining us, they come with an arbitrary idea of what they want to make. Some have structures in who want an app or who want a website, but sometimes the main role that comes in for a UX UI designer is to take in all of the information and digest it. Digest it in a way that the other person has not been able to see their product or their idea in that perspective. So you, as a UX UI designer, you get tons of information. It's tactical information, some user research information. So you digest that together and you suggest an output that, okay, I think for your MVP, this should work. This is the idea that is your main idea that should go out and we should be able to get this done in X amount of time. So that I see nowadays has become one of the final output or roles of a UX UI designer. We do have our share of the UX roles and the UI roles that we bring into the whole process, right? The whole design process. But the ultimate, as an 8-year-old or a 10-year design experience person, this is something that is helpful to a client when they come to you with a question and a design thought, right? So, can you, as a UX/UI designer, bring in that much clarity to your uh, client, whoever is coming in?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I mean, and it sounds like the main role is to take a lot of information, the big idea for a product, and how do we synthesize that down into manageable flows, maybe take that one main idea and kind of run with it. But can you walk us through like how you like to think about these big ideas and like how you personally like to break them down? Because like I think every designer is going to have a different process, and we follow some processes here at Spring Studio to kind of help unearth some ideas and to like certain flows in place and all of that. But like for the most part, I think it's very designer specific. It's like how they go about unearthing these ideas and laying this foundation for what will be the product. How do you like to do that?
It starts with chaos. That's how we receive the information and that's how we collect the information, right? It starts with a blank Figma screen of chaos with all the thoughts put in. Like, we have research, I have research put in, I have inspiration images put in, I have a lot of business goals that we have received as PDRs from our clients, right? That's put in as nuggets of information that kind of helps you create the softer side, the how the UI should be represented. So it's a lot of information that we collect in smaller bits from different documents that people have to understand the vastness of the idea. Because as designers, we eventually have to bring them down to user flows, like focus on each and every screen, each and every text field that we put out. A user is going to fill that information in, and that information is going to get stored with us. So whenever you're demanding a user's time on your app, you think about it, right? Because as we have gone through studies and research that shows that um, the purpose of an idea is lost somewhere when you put in a lot of interactions or a lot of tasks that a user needs to do, right? The more you bombard them with that, or more you don't think about, maybe if you have to collect that much information, you schedule it out. You break it down into pieces and you collect that information so that the user has time to adapt to a certain product that you're bringing. So I believe that this is the kind of uh, loose thought that or structure that we bring into any of the big ideas that come in. And then you put those ideas through this process. That does it define a certain purpose that the user needs to fulfill? Does it match with the business goals? And weaning out those ideas with these little filters then gives us a list of things that can be called as an MVP of a product, right? So big ideas always wean down into the basic crux, the basic needs that you need to build for your immediate user market.
I love that. I mean, and that, like, to just kind of piggyback off of what you said, like, as designers, we are the advocate for the user. We are here to be that advocate for the user, making sure that their experience in the product is a decent one, is a good one, is a really wonderful one, whatever. And I think that's one thing that is often lost when founders want to start something. They're like, okay, we've got the idea for the business and the idea to make this business successful and this product successful. And oftentimes, what I've noticed is there's that missing piece in user advocacy that they don't really consider in the early days of like, how is my user going to use this thing? And are they going to enjoy themselves using this thing? And that's where I think you do such a great job, is coming in and being that advocate for the user and like understanding these 22 steps that you have the user going through. before they get to their final destination is way too many. Like, let's pare that down. Let's find a new way of getting that user from A to B. I think it's a challenge that even like all of the designers that I've worked with is like, all right, how do we make this experience a little bit better for the user? Do you have any ways that you like to go about that and like think through ways to make that user experience a little bit better?
As designers, we find these pockets of opportunities, right? Sometimes when the client is kind of sharing the thought with you or the way they say something, we can identify the little pockets of interesting user element that we could add and that would keep somebody interested, right? Like a pocket of curiosity that you embed with your brand, maybe. So, going back to your conversation, so sometimes I realize that it's an iterative process. It's not that you're going to get the flows right the very first time because there's a lot of research based on assumptions. Once your user actually uses the product that you've made, the feedback that you get out of that is much more truer than the research that you could have done before that. It's all based on competitor apps, reading the market, making assumptions or making aspirations of where you would want to be. But once the product is ready, there's always a need for a second round of iteration that goes into looking at how the user experience is going about now that the user is using the app, right? So that second round of iteration, very necessary because it's almost you never get it right the first time. And that's okay. That is the whole point of putting something out there so that you know what doesn't work.
I want to stay on that because I think user feedback can be really helpful. And it only is possible when the product is in front of people. Like when actual users are using this thing, like we can get some decent feedback just from, say, a prototype or from some screens and get some information back from potential users. But if there's actually people using the thing that are willing to give you their thoughts and tell you, I hate this, I love this, this is confusing, this makes a ton of sense, having that luxury, having the ability to talk directly with people using the product can be really helpful in that next phase, in that next iteration. What role does user feedback play in shaping your designs and that next round that you're talking about of the product? Do you listen to everything? Do you listen to some things? How do you filter the feedback that's worth listening to versus the feedback that might not apply? How do you like to go about it?
I think this comes a little bit from the business itself, that keeping the user feedback in place, as we know that MVP takes, we are time bound and we build the MVP a certain amount of times to get a product out into the market to see how the users are reacting or interacting with it, right? So when the feedback comes in, it's first the user goals that are set in place the business goals that are set in place, that where do we want to take this product? What is the market that is demanding? What's the user? What's the insights from the research that comes in, right? So that kind of helps designers to make that call, to understand what the business goals are at that particular time or in that quarter, on that financial year. What's the business goals? And you align your product development based on that. You take insights from the research and you align your product development. So I think designers get a lot of help from business decision documents that we are shared from whoever is working with us.
That makes sense. And, again, going back to what we said before is like being an advocate for the user while simultaneously understanding that design is part of a bigger thing. Like it's part of a whole product development and like it's part of the business, and making sure that we balance user needs and user advocacy with business needs. And it is hard to balance because like we want to stand firm and say, no, we are the user advocate. Like we are here to do, one thing and one thing really well. And that is create the best possible product for our users. And in reality, it's like, yeah, that's only part of the equation though.
I would also see it in this way that you cannot fix everything at once. That's the reality of development, is what I've realized, that if I want to solve 10 problems, I have to start by solving problem one. So then the priority list comes in, and that's something that we designers also use it a lot while we are designing the UI itself, that we prioritize a list of items. We prioritize categories that we put into different dashboards, right? We prioritize which data should be shown on top and which data comes right below it. So it's a step towards priority that we take, and that helps you aid into the decision making of what to build next, right?
What advice would you give to startup founders on how to effectively communicate their vision for their product to a UI UX designer?
I think it's mostly through it's nothing can beat a conversation, right? When somebody is kind of sharing the inspiration or the thought behind the product, the idea that they started with versus if they now have a product already in the market, now they should have already have a good understanding of what their users are doing on their product and what do you want them to be doing on your product, right? So questions like these is something that I believe that most founders who at least who have joined us have had this clarity that okay, this is what my product is doing, but this is what I would want it to do because my users are not enjoying this aspect of my product, and it's very difficult for them to access this onto a mobile platform. So they have very specific worries that they have encountered when they have been dealing with their users and with their product, right? So when they come to us with this whole lot of problems or list of problems that they have, we can then prioritize that list, saying that okay, the user not being able to access the platform into different devices is a aspect of responsiveness, right? And we prioritize this list, saying that okay, this is the most important 5 things from this list of 10 things that we should immediately tackle on. And that's where we build the next version of the product or the idea, whatever that they shared with us, we build that idea into the second version of the product. So yeah, having a good clarity of the product.
Having clarity on the product itself, and even more so understanding like the happy path. Like I talk
Yeah.
a lot about the happy path versus edge cases and stuff. It's like what is the end goal for your users? You should definitely understand that. You should know that.
No.
And then like start to consider or start to figure out like what that flow might look like, what that
Yeah.
path to starting point and end point, like what that flow might look like for a user. I find that that's always helpful in especially new clients that are coming to us with an MVP or just an idea. It's like, hey, I've got this idea for a
Yes.
product. I'm really excited to build it. It's going to do X. It's going to do Y. It's going to have all these features, all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, let's focus on one first. Let's focus on that happy path. Let's focus on the main thing. What is a user when they first log in? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to do? Let's define that. And then we can start to kind of like build out the rest of the architecture and the rest of the structure.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Does that sort of align
Of
with
course,
your
makes sense.
experience?
And also, the person who is building out this product will have the most defined idea about what this happy flow should be. This
Mm-hmm.
is something that the client itself can do because they're dealing with their product or they're using the product every day and looking at how the users have been reacting to that, the feedback on social media, if their product is a social media product, right? So they are the ones who will be able to give the most purest form of what the happy flow should be like. And all of the edge cases, something that we designers take up is like, in this scenario, if the user wants to find something, where do they find it? If you want that the user should be able to find this document or this information, how do we make sure that they don't miss it?
That's really interesting. And that I think goes back to the role of a designer. And the role of a designer kind of changes depending on the product and depending on what is needed. I've talked a lot about being an advocate for the user and balancing business goals with user needs. Talk to me about how you like to think about your role as a designer.
Honestly, I've seen my role change with every, like you said, very rightly said, that every product needs something else from you as a designer. So when I say that I'm essentially a product designer, or when a project comes to me, and when we take in the information, then is when we can decide that, okay, this is something that needs, this project needs from me. This is what I can provide, or this is how I can elevate the product and bring it to this level that it needs to be or it's expected to be. So that's how I kind of define my role, whether it's can be just UX needs, that the product just needs me to look at it from a user perspective or just look at user interaction. Sometimes products need very, very big UI changes or very basic UI changes, like making things consistent across the whole product. Because, for example, the product was made across various development cycles and they were produced by different development agencies. So there might just be an inconsistency in the product. So that's where my role becomes as more of a UI designer who is making sure that every element is consistent across, right? And in some places, it's more of the fun parts of branding, right? Where you can bring in a little bit of storytelling, you can bring in fun or curiosity packed within the product, because right now the product is at a stage where the brand can start to express itself through their technical products as well. So yeah, I see each project as a blank sheet, and then I define my roles. Okay, this is how I can be useful for this project.
I love this idea of a brand expressing itself through the product. This is kind of a new concept to me. I was at Config. I think I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I was at Config in San Francisco a couple months ago, and one of the designers from the browser company that builds Arc had a wonderful, wonderful talk. And she was talking about how there's so much sterile design. And like, I'm a big Apple guy. Like, I like simple, minimalist design. Like, some might call it sterile design, whatever. And she was saying that they've made a very deliberate choice early in the product to make sure it felt lived in, to make sure that this product felt like it was designed intentionally and designed in a very welcoming way, where it didn't feel sterile. It didn't feel like every other browser out there, every other product out there. And that's not to say that it's like the right way to do things, but I love this idea of like making sure a product feels lived in, or allowing the brand to express itself through the product. Can you think of any other ways that you've tried to do that in your work? Because I know you've worked on some massive projects, big undertaking. How do you like to inject a little bit of that personality in?
That's a very nice way to look at it, like something that's lived in, right? Because the general psychology is, if there's something new or something that has a white cover, you don't want to touch it because you you have that feeling that you're going to make it dirty. Right? So any new thing, it does not attract a person to come and meddle with it. So the play element that we were talking about earlier, maybe that could play in over here. Uh, but uh, mostly I take small steps because sometimes in terms of business goals, and when you list down your business goals, fun comes as a last priority. But that fun can be expressed in smaller elements. Is That's what I try to sometimes introduce when I understand that there's scope for a brand to have elements that they can already express. So that's an opportunity right there. When basic things like in dashboards, right? When you look at data, the main landing page, which has all of the data information, it has graphs and it has numbers and things like that. So that's the first place where I try to search for an element that you could play with. Anything that keeps the user looking at this mundane data that they're looking at every day, like a person who's at a manager level, at a CEO level. You don't expect any user to be like, engaged in looking at numbers and titles and graphs on a screen every day. And if you have just a small element, like a loading element of a duck who's just walking in a row, right? To a person who's working in a corporate, opens up his dashboard for the first time in the morning, sees a duck walking in a row as a loader screen. that just brings a smile on that person's face before they have to look at numbers and graphs, right? So
Yep.
that's where I come from, that I search for smaller opportunities. And when that opportunity is kind of presented to maybe the client or the people from the company, or if it resonates with the brand, then we take that thought forward and we start implementing it across even, professional dashboards or professional products that we have out there. It's just a way to bring a smile on somebody's face. Like, we can't bring in delight with a text field, but we can bring in delight in other ways.
It's a good reminder to not take things so seriously all the time. Like there's room to play, there's room to be fun, even in boring software. Like looking at charts and graphs and numbers all day, like, just add a little duck.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh,
Oh, I love it. That obviously requires buy-in from the client, and some clients are probably resistant to that. So I like that you default to that first, where it's like, can we do this? What do you think? And sometimes the client's up for it, sometimes they're not. But at least we're trying, right? We're trying to bring a little
yeah.
bit of that sense of joy and
Yeah.
fun, and you know,
Yeah.
going back to the browser company is like make it feel a little lived in.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thought. Make it lived in.
Have you noticed
Mm.
any specific trends in the design community that have caught your eye recently, specifically like around product design? I mean, we're talking about the browser company doing things like in a slightly different way than most other browsers, making the product feel lived in, introducing that play. What other sort of trends are you starting to see emerge?
Figma is kind of setting the benchmark in terms of design uh, approach of the design market out there. But I look at design across the field. So there's this project that is called as the block phone. So it's the basic and the most creative way to kind of target the 80% of the users. We define the market, like the usable market, as 80/20, right? And we always approach that, okay, maybe if we can build something for the 20% of the users, we'll be able to get them across to the 80% with the little amount of effort that we put in. But this concept, it kind of is hitting towards the 80% of the user, that can I make a basic phone and let it be modular, let people just rearrange it and make it in a way that they want to use the phone. So it's very uh, purpose-based design. Again, like we said, it's and another thing that I noticed about this is that when users are given this freedom, right, to kind of use a product in their own way, you build along with the user. So you don't get stuck in a realm where, okay, my design ideas are limited to my team, or my design innovations get limited to my team. Then the innovation expands to your user base or your market that is there. That becomes your field through which you are getting in feedback, because you've created a basic form, right? So I kind of look at different examples across our design field and what people are doing. Kind of that gives me another thought that some other designer would have come across, but it can be applicable even in our UX UI design field.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. Looking in other industries for inspiration, for trends, knowing that it may or may not make its way to a digital product, but you can at least see how other designers and other industries and other completely other categories might be thinking about design, and then kind of learning from that as well.
Comes.
That's cool. I like that. I was back, 10, 15 years ago, I ran a custom furniture company and designed furniture. And I would always look at digital products for inspiration for a piece of furniture. And everybody thought I was nuts. And maybe I was, maybe I am, I don't know. But they thought it was bizarre. It's like, no, you should be looking at the industry. You should be looking at the furniture industry and like seeing, it's like, yeah, I did that too. But I wanted to expand what I looked at for inspiration, and where I looked for inspiration, to see if anything else would strike from other industries. Like I looked at cars, I looked at digital products, I looked at all sorts of stuff for like furniture inspiration. And some of it applied, some of it didn't. But it was always just like kind of keeping my mind open to other possibilities and other ideas from other industries.
Yeah. Like the creative
Yeah.
thought has no boundaries, right?
Exactly. I didn't want to limit myself just to look in that box. Speaking of kind of design as a whole, how do you see the role of a product designer evolving in the next few years? I know we have AI starting to play a role, and our job is going to be changing with this little AI assistant that we get to use all day, every day. Like that's coming. It's coming very, very soon. So, like, how do you see your role as a product designer kind of evolving over the next couple of years?
AI is, again, as you said, rightly said, it is an inspiration as to become an assistant, a second brain that you use. So I don't see a big change in the UX UI field in terms of uh, growth technologically. We might see many different processes becoming even more seamless than we already have, right? Payment systems becoming faster, onboardings becoming faster. So I would say that I see foundational processes becoming more seamless versus the space that is there to creatively break this mundane cycle of rectangles that we see on a screen, right? To break that cycle and to then uh, bring in that element that keeps users uh, kind of involved with the product or be interested or even get the thought across as a brand, get your thought across because uh, the version of uh, websites and apps that we have in our head has changed a lot over the years. The way we use these apps, not just for utility purposes, even social media, we've seen apps bring in so much user retention just by providing social media content, right? So trends like these will seem to grow, and I would say that yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And like going back to the sort of using AI as an assistant, like I see that as like the first step in the process. And the AI as an assistant or second brain can be things like renaming layers, like automatically renaming layers. There's a bunch of these demo videos going around right now where, Figma's new AI assistant can literally just name all your layers for you so you don't have to worry about that. Not that it was a big issue before. Like I never named my layers. It was never a big issue, but it's one of those little things that was kind of annoying to have to do for certain clients. Just like, we don't really need this. Now AI can just take care of it for you. Things like that, or at least getting you like started in a general direction. That's what I'm really excited about is like using AI to brainstorm, using AI to help workshop some ideas or some solutions. It's like, hey, I'm working on this new onboarding flow. It's not a standard traditional onboarding flow. Here's the challenges that I'm facing, and can you help me come up with a few directions or a few options for how to handle this type of onboarding or this type of content? Like it's just there to be a helpful second brain for you. Like, and that's where I see the most value coming in the near term. And then the long term, who knows? Who knows? Like in 6 months, it's all going to change. Like we have no
I
idea
know.
where we're going. We're along for the ride. We're happy to be here and going to use the tool to the best of our abilities to get better design done faster. What are you most excited about when it comes to design over the next, I don't know, couple years?
Taking from our AI conversation that we had, that some of the routine stuff that we need to do, which is organizing and collecting thoughts and putting it into structures, that is something that we can, lend out those activities to a second brain to do it, whereas we can create that space for us to, basically design to create in terms of what is it that you can bring into this a simple layout of onboarding, or a problem that you're facing where the onboarding is a bit challenging or a bit different than some other companies would need, right? So that creative space to find a good solution and to have time to iterate while you're building an MVP, right? That's what it does. It gives designers time and space to kind of have that opportunity to spend some more time and figuring out the solution, because it's always from that chaos of, okay, this solution works, maybe this works, no, this UI doesn't work. So in that chaos is where we can pick out elements and put it in a flow, saying that, oh, maybe this is the flow that works the best for now. Let's share it with the team, see where they are.
Using AI to take care of all the stuff that we don't want to do. So it gives us the opportunity to use our brain, think about, potential solutions to these complex problems, and how best to solve them for the user and the business.
Yeah.
I like it. Awesome. Well, Shruti, this has been a very insightful, interesting conversation. Anything else you want to chat about?
No, I think we covered quite a bit of a lot of different things.
Look out for a follow-up episode where we just talk about AI for 45 minutes. Watch out for that one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining, Shruti. It was a pleasure as always. I'm glad we were able to find some time. If anybody wants to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
I will be at Spring Studio.
Just come
I'm
knocking.
always available. Yeah. We are here.
I love it. Thank you so much for doing this. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you at Spring Studio.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.